interviews today. We're interviewing another Russian. His name is Edvard Chesnokov. He is a correspondent for the very famous Komsomolskaya Pravda newspaper. He and I have known each other slightly for a few years. He reached out to me in 2017 or 18, and you must correct me, Edvard, if I'm mistaken. And since then, we've kept... Yes?
Yeah, that's right. I know you for ages.
And since then, we've kept in touch from time to time. And it's, in fact, Edvard had something to do with me going to Russia because he extended a proposition, an invitation, choose your favorite word, on behalf of a Russian member of parliament. So I'm very grateful to him, and I'm very pleased to welcome him to this show today. Welcome, Edvard.
Thank you, Simon. I hope we can, you and I both can create a good image of Russia, because there are lots of lies. There are lots of fake news about Russia. We see that MSM, mainstream media, they are spreading misinformation about our country, as well as about your movement.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of misinformation. One particular story that just stands out for me, well, I could talk all day about Russians are not surly people. They're extremely helpful and hospitable. The country is magnificent. The economy is doing well. It's all a lie, but the most fantastic one was I was in Donetsk city in July, and one night I had to go to buy a cigarette lighter. We were walking down to a restaurant, my host and me, and I saw a shop, a nice supermarket. So I said to him, just give me 1 minute, I'll go in and get the lighter. And I ran inside, and the way the shop is laid out, you have to walk a long way around to get to the front again, to the pay point. And as I walked around, I saw the biggest pile of potatoes I've seen in my whole life. And I bought the lighter and I went out. And the next morning, the Telegraph newspaper of London published a story saying, famine in Russia, food shortages, no potatoes, Putin facing uprisings over starvation. It was just unbelievable that 12 hours before I'd seen 4 tons of potatoes.
Are ostensibly eating the last cod red, like a last red on the last bottle of oil,
Yeah. And it's funny, you know, in Russia, you pack the shelves in the supermarkets differently. Like how we do it, and the Europeans mostly, is you will have maybe 4 items that are the same, and then there will be 10 behind them. So there'll be 40 items on a shelf. Whereas in Russia, you pack just one of this, one of that, one of the next thing, meaning that there's a lot greater variety on the same shelf.
Yeah, and the majority of this food is domestic. We produce meat, bird, cheese, milk, grape, practically everything. Well,
everything.
I saw some vegetables from Iran, just imagine. So while the West is spreading the narrative that Russia is ostensibly isolated, I observe in the supermarket excellent peppers from Iran.
Well, you know, I was telling somebody the other day, I forget, in one petyorchka, the little corner shops, I mentioned that you, of course, know what is a petyorchka, but for those people who don't, it's a little...
Пятерочка.
Yeah, I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah. Russian language is not so easy.
No, it's not easy.
It means 5. Пятерочка means 5. Or like 5e, 5e.
And in this little corner shop in Yuzhny Tushna, I mean, just a suburb, outside Moscow. There were 108 or 111 different varieties of bread, not loaves, different options. It's incredible. I've never seen so much variety in my life, not in the USA. And I have toured the USA nearly 40,000 miles. And I've never seen anything like it.
I
Just a
can't
little
believe
shop in the
you.
middle of nowhere.
Didn't you?
No, for sure. I never
No,
saw 100 different
no, Simon.
options.
Besides all you have just described, we also have delivery. By your smartphone, you can make an order, for example, either milk or bread or elsewhere, for example, large 5-liter bottles of water or so on, and they will be delivered within an hour. Yeah, it costs some money, of course, but this delivery works even on Sunday, even in the midnight. You can make delivery if you want a milk or a meat or elsewhere. So this is how it works. Yeah, of course, the price of this delivery is a little higher than in Peterochka, but it works, and practically everybody of my mates use this delivery. A courier will come to a flat and deliver this milk or bread, your order. So this is it.
I joked with a friend of mine in Russia, a friend I made, Dmitry Balkovsky. I said to him, for sure, the most common shop or store in Russia is Salon Krasoti, the beauty salon.
Beauty salon.
It's unbelievable.
It is nail salon, for,
Yes.
mostly for women, also hairdressing, barbershop. Yeah.
But after Salon Krasoti is wild berries and ozone. So you get the deliveries to your door, and you get these like I don't know even what to compare them to. But what's amazing about them is how many there are.
It is like a fantastic movie, you know. And also in Moscow, I see robots. This is not like humankind robot. It is like a little car with 6 wheels, like about 1 meter high. It is a little cargo robot. Yeah, of course, it works not all over Moscow. It operates only in the city center, in the business center where the skyscrapers are built. But indeed, it is a robot, Russia manufactured, with artificial intelligence, who can look at the street signs, at the traffic lines, to define that now he must cross the pedestrian road, or now he mustn't, and even not only human couriers, but also such robots are available in Moscow. So this is really like a fantastic movie.
It is like a fantastic movie. And just to clarify for our viewers, when I talk about wild berries and ozone, these are delivery places.
Marketplace, yeah. We call it internet marketplace.
Exactly, where you go to pick things up. Now, again, I refer to the amount of time I've spent traveling in the USA, and there is no comparison.
So in every multi-story building, you have a point of ozone, a marketplace, a point of wild berries. It is like the 2 largest marketplaces where you can offer practically everything. And also,
it's unbelievable.
And you talked about the beauty salon, Salon Krasoti in Russian, a beauty salon, a nail salon, barbershop. There are, you can find them practically at every corner. In every multi-story house, there are more than one of such a salon. For example, in my house, there are 3 salons.
Unbelievable. Well, I'm glad that we've put that one to bed. Hopefully people will start believing these.
And for Russians, for the Russians, it is a surprise that you are surprised by this. We got used to it.
Yes, I stopped believing the mainstream media a long time ago. But about Russia, it was only at the beginning of the special military operation that I started to realize that the West was just lying about everything. It became too obvious. However, never having been to Russia, I had nothing to go on. So I thought, well, I've read a book about Russia. I've done a lot of research in the Encyclopedia Britannica and some other books that I bought. I kind of have a little bit of an idea, but I didn't have any idea whatsoever. They do a fantastic job universally of lying about Russia. Every single Western newspaper, every single television channel, every radio channel. And the interesting thing is that Russians are so modest and shy about these things. I had a supper with a very well-known guy in Russia who's part of the War Crimes Tribunal. And I said to him, why don't you guys generate more material in English? Your own propaganda, your own PR, because you're like shy or modest or humble. I don't understand it, but get the English material out there, man, because you can defeat the lies of the West with just a very small effort, because even a small effort will just expose and expose and expose the Western lies. But there's not a lot of material in English about Russia. Why do you think that is, Edvard?
Bro, I totally agree with you, but every pro-Russian material would be censored on YouTube. YouTube is the main video platform, right? And for example, there was a small TV channel called Duma TV, which means the Russian parliamentary television. It just streamed the sessions of the Russian parliament. And after reaching about 100,000 subscribers, it was just erased from YouTube. Why? Why? Maybe the Western civilization considers the video streams from the sessions of the Russian parliament in the Russian language as a global threat to the Western civilizations. It's bogus. For example, I work with Komsomolskaya Pravda. Its YouTube channel counted, well, I do not remember, but I think it also were hundreds of thousands subscribers. Dozens of bloggers, pro-Russian bloggers, they did not violate the YouTube rules. They did not call for aggression. They did not pronounce hate speech. They just told people the truth about Russia. And thousands of highly influential and highly popular vloggers, for example, one of them is Dmitry Puchkov. It is called Goblin, like a hero of the fairy tale. So Dmitry Puchkov had millions of subscribers, and he was erased from YouTube. So what do I mean? I mean that the West does not let any positive information about Russia to enter its digital platforms.
Yes, but I think that more use should be made of RuTube, because if you go on RuTube, you can't find, there's very little in English, and it's not about Russia. It's kind of videos for Russians to learn English. So no matter what search terms you type, you always come back to these same stupid language videos, to learn English. They're at a low level. That's why I say stupid. I'm teaching basic words as if you're speaking to a child, and I'm sure it's the other way around. There's nothing wrong with it. But I went there and I thought there must be resources here where I can learn in English about Russia. You know, Edvard, one of the most amazing experiences of my whole life, everything, my entire life, was the 9th of May Victory Day Parade. I didn't go, I wasn't an invited guest or a VIP, so I just walked with two friends on the streets. And I thought to myself, how is it possible that you can find on the internet 100 videos about every avenue and road and street in San Francisco, almost every apartment? Janis Joplin played her first guitar over here. Janis Joplin did something over there. You know, all of these obscure things that nobody's interested in. But you see that street of the Bolshoi Theater. I walked along that street. My mind was blown. It was the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. But do you think I can find a video in English anywhere on the internet? So my advice is you guys should use YouTube, because maybe not 10 million English speakers will go there, but it might be 1 million or 500,000 or 100,000 eventually, because I'm sure that there are many English speakers like me who want to know something about Russia. And then we can subvert this Western lie, because once the truth starts to get out, it's very difficult to put it back in the bottle. What do you think about my suggestion, Edvard?
Yes, Simon, I totally agree with you. I know that some expats, the Americans, the Westerners who relocated to Russia to escape the new ethics, the LGBT and so on, to save their children from the sodomy, they run their blogs and their video blogs. For example, I know the Anna, this is a woman name, the Anna and her husband Derek, and their surname is Hoffman. So the Anna Hoffman and Derek Hoffman, they live in Russia. They are Americans. And Derek has voluntarily joined the Russian military to protect his new motherland. And they had an influential blog, maybe on YouTube. So they really, so I suggest you to find some blogs of expats in Instagram. As for RootTube, yeah, I agree with you that RootTube does not do its best. Its algorithms are worse than the algorithms of YouTube. So, some of the things on RootTube are done incorrectly. Yeah, it is not effective. But we have Russia Today. We have also lots of bloggers in the social. But again, such a blogger can exist only before he would reach some boundary. For a YouTube blogger, it is about 100,000. After that, it would ban. So this is how the Western digital system works. And it is like an iron curtain, but an iron curtain vice versa. It is an iron curtain that was built by the West to protect itself from the truth.
Yeah. If I wasn't committed to this cause, and if I didn't have big children, in other words, children that can't come with me or won't come with me if I leave this country, if I was younger without children and I wasn't doing the job that I'm doing, I would move to Russia without a shadow of a doubt. It is a marvelous place for children. It's very orderly, crime-free, no graffiti, no potholes. There are exceptions to everything. When I say no, I don't mean absolutely 100%. I mean,
yes, there is no paradise on the earth.
Yeah.
But Russia is good. Russia is
Yeah,
like
Russia's fantastic.
the last shelter. I think Russia is like an ark shelter for the traditional values, for the Christianity. For example, about 4 months ago, a special act was imposed, a law prohibiting decrucifixion. So now every image, every advertising with a temple must have a cross, a Christian cross on its top. If you look at the West, you would see that in the West, the Christian churches are literally being erased from the face of the earth.
Yes, the Russian churches. I've mentioned this to the audience before, but there is something very peculiar about Russian churches.
Yeah, we call it Krestny Khod, a special, like a kind of Christian religious manifestation dedicated to some religious holidays. And the last one occurred in Moscow on the 7th of September, less than a week ago, and it gathered about 200,000 people. Just imagine. We cannot imagine. So we cannot imagine such a Christian religious gathering in the West, even in the most Christian countries.
Yes, I received a video of it from one of the participants. Again, my friend Dmitry Balkovsky. And this morning I was in my house where I am now, and I was just thinking about that video and seeing these thousands of people participating together in an act of Christian worship and faith. And my heart was very sore because I've never had such an experience in my whole life. And that must be just the most wonderful experience. My heart was very sore this morning. I would like to,
like a unification, like a
yes,
feeling of unification.
Edvard, moving on to other subjects. I've been trying to explain to people since I was in Russia about what is happening on the battlefield. And it's a difficult job for me because obviously I'm competing against Western media. But today, I'll read you just today some interesting things. There is Alexander Syrsky, the head of the Ukrainian military, says that Ukraine is down to about 1/3 of Russia's armed forces. We know that Russia has 650,000 men in the field, so Ukraine has a little bit over 200,000. And analysts have done some analyzing, and they say that that would equate to about 30,000 frontline infantry combat soldiers only. Bear with me. I'm going to mention a couple of other things, then I'm going to give you the opportunity to...
You mean the numbers of the casualties, or what?
No. Syrsky is saying that the Ukrainian armed forces are now only 1/3 as large as the Russian armed forces because of the casualties, yes. And the Russian armed forces, we know, is about 650,000. So that means that the Ukrainian armed forces is about 200,000. And then if you take out the cooks and the drivers and the commanders and the people who are peeling the potatoes, and then you would have about 30,000. Then, according to Military Watch magazine, which is a Western publication, about 90%, came out today, 90% of Ukraine's, all of the men who have been through the war, the guys who started, the guys who came in later, about 90% have either deserted, been too seriously wounded to return to the battlefield, or have been killed. Can you respond to those two things to give our English audience a better idea of what's really happening in Ukraine? Because we've got Ursula von der Leyen telling us that the Russians are almost beaten. We've got Mark Rutte from NATO telling us one more punch and Russia will be knocked out. Please tell us what's really going on.
First, Russia has been trying to solve the Ukrainian crisis for 8 years, since 2014. Russia has been begging, it has been calling the West, Ukraine, just to amplify the Minsk agreements, the Minsk peaceful agreements that Ukraine and its Western curators have signed themselves. And nothing was in progress. So before starting of the special military operation, Russia has been trying to peacefully solve this crisis for 8 years. You know, even Zelensky, when he came to power, when he ran to the elections in 2019, he multiply promised that he would solve the problem, that he would stop the war. At the time, it was a Cold War in Donbass. Zelensky promised that he would talk to Putin himself, that he would impose the Minsk agreements, and so on. So as we see, it was a total lie. Then, again, before the special military operations, in 2020 and in 2021, Zelensky has banned practically all really opposite parties. They were literally banned. The opposite media, they were not pro-Russian, they were just anti-Zelensky. The opposed media, such as one was called Zik, News One, and so on, they were banned. And Europe calls it democracy. Now we see in 2024, there were the presidential elections in Russia, but there were no presidential elections in Ukraine. The last ones were in 2019. The next one supposed to be in 2024. So Zelensky has canceled the freedom of speech. He has canceled the elections, the presidential elections, the parliamentary elections. He has literally banned every alternative opinion. But for the West, Ukraine, led by a literal military dictator, is a democracy. And Russia, which has an elected president, a fully legitimately elected president, for the West, Russia is authoritarian, totalitarian, and so on. So you see, it is a top of hypocrisy. Now to the war. You know, the first episode of the special military operation was Battle for Kiev. Simultaneously, Russia continued to beg to Ukraine, to the West. Just Russia asked Ukraine to stop the war. Russia did at that time, in the beginning of 2022, that spring, Russia did not want to capture the 4 Ukrainian regions: the Zaporozhskaya region, the Khersonskaya region, the Donetsk and the Lugansk region. At that time, in winter, you know, the Russian military men prohibited to take off the Ukrainian flags in the Ukrainian cities under the Russian control. That is fact. And simultaneously, the peaceful negotiations in Istanbul were launched. But now it is clear, it is a proved fact that the then time Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, just made a call to Zelensky. Zelensky made a call to Istanbul, to the Ukrainian delegation, and the peaceful negotiations at that time in March 2022 were halted by Ukraine and the West. So who really wants to impose peace? Russia. And only after that, Russia had to, reluctantly, it had to welcome the new four regions and to officially, after the referendum, acquire it. I also would like to point out, would like to mention that the Crimea in 2014, the new four regions of Donbass in 2022, they were let in as a part of Russia as a result of a plebiscite, a referendum. But when the West destroyed Yugoslavia, when the West destroyed Serbia and seceded Kosovo from Serbia in 2008, there were no referendum. There were no referendum, you know. It was just a signed paper. And the West calls it democracy. So, yeah, you know, and as for the last part of your question, of course, every actor exaggerates his own achievements and nullifies the achievements of its counterpart. So, of course, the West would spread the narrative that ostensibly Russia is weak, Russia has no oil, and so on. Russia...
no potatoes.
Oh, yeah, no potatoes, no mice, no rats, no mosquitoes, no nothing, you know. But you see that the reality is quite different. The reality is that the West is a small group of about 1/6 part of the world, 1/6 or 1/5 part of the world. Do you remember any world problem that was solved by the G7? No.
Edvard, I am going to ask you this question for the sake of the many Americans with whom I deal on an ongoing basis. I have made, as I said to you, I've driven by car about 40,000 miles through the United States of America. I've been to 38 of the 50 US states, and I've made many wonderful, wonderful, very conservative friends, people who would fit in well in Russia. But there seems to be one message that that Americans are not hearing very well, and that is about BRICS. We've been saying on this channel for a long time, obviously for us, there is some level of regret about BRICS because we are not sure that the South African government will give an equal contribution as China and India and Russia. So BRICS is for us a bit of a strange thing. However, we've been saying in our videos for some years now that the West must wake up and recognize how powerful BRICS is going to be and how BRICS is going to change the balance of economic power in the world. We see this happening, but we still don't hear Americans. The American president, just in recent days, has been speaking openly about BRICS. You've got the Howard Lutnick saying that India must leave BRICS. And you have the American president saying, I
It's a
think that we have
megaphone diplomacy.
yes, but it's very new to hear this from American leaders, and among the not to say lower classes, but beneath the top leadership of the USA, people are not talking about this thing. As a Russian, as a journalist who understands geopolitics, tell us more about the power and the strength of BRICS and what it's going to change, what it's going to achieve.
You know, let's compare, for example, BRICS and NATO or the European Union. In the latter, there are at least two actors, Hungary and Slovakia. Both of these countries do not want any war with Russia. They do not want to contribute to this war. They just want to maintain friendship with Russia. But Brussels, the EU, NATO, they neglect the opinion of their own members, you know. But as for BRICS, it is a really equal partnership, a partnership where the voice and the ideas, the opinions of every member are matter. You know, it is like the real democracy in its natural, original view. That is the difference. Yeah, you're right. BRICS is not a political union like the European Union. It is not a defensive union or a military union like NATO. It is just a kind of club, maybe ideological club, where the people, the nations standing for real democracy and standing for real multipolarity, they can gather and they can like show out that there is an alternative to the Western liberal order. So this is it. It is not an economic union. You know, there is no a common currency like euro. There is no common army like NATO. But if you have a look at the European Union, it began its way in 1950s. So now it counts 3/4 of the century. BRICS is much more younger. It barely counts 1/4 of the century. So of course, BRICS has not made all the steps it needs to form the real union, the real political bloc. Maybe it is good because without such a political installation, BRICS maintains the traditions, the traditional values of every of its member. This is it.
Edvard, as a Russian and as a journalist, as you see what is occurring in the world at the moment with BRICS, with Russia's overwhelming success in Ukraine, we have Western magazines. These are my notes. Western magazines talking about 90% of Ukraine's military intake from the beginning of 2022, the number of men that they had there, plus the extras that came, having either deserted or being seriously wounded or having been killed in action. We hear about the Russian drone attacks, 810 on the night of last night. We hear about 30,000 men left on the Ukrainian front line. That is to say, combat soldiers not potato cookers.
Mhm.
When you see the USA, you know, like a maniac, some kind of a madman, doing all sorts of strange things to interfere in this war. When you see NATO sending a drone to smash one of your Voronezh M intercontinental ballistic missile radars, when you see the USA attacking one part of the triad of your nuclear triad, that is to say the 295 Bear long range strategic bombers, when you see all of this sort of bizarre behavior from the West, you know, behavior that's not explained by logic and reason, when you see Ursula von der Leyen giving speeches that are just crazy, that have no connection with reality, do you think that what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, Ukraine, Donetsk, Donbass, do you think that these events can be explained in the fleshly world, in the material world, or do you think that these events are motivated by something completely spiritual? And by that, I'm alluding to Russia as the ark, Russia as the Katichen against the Antichrist. Excuse my pronunciation. I'm thinking about these crazy Freemasons who just dominate every level of Western leadership. I'm thinking about these, you know, bizarre actors on the stage in the West. It's past the point. To me, it is long past the point where you can say, oh, well, maybe it's about the oil. Oh, golly gee, maybe it's about the dollar, or maybe it's because the one chap doesn't like the other chap. It seems to have moved far beyond that point. What's your opinion?
Bro, I totally agree with you, because this war, it is existential. We are fighting for our values. We are fighting for our Christianity. You know, there are multiple facts when the Ukrainian, in fact, the NATO shells are bombing the Christian temples.
Mm-hmm.
See that the Ukrainian authorities have captured the monastery in Kiev. It is called Kievo-Pecherskaya Lavra in Russian. This monastery was an object of a raid attack. There are hundreds of Orthodox priests illegally captured or detained under false accusations in Ukraine. We see that even the official press speaker of ZSU, the Ukrainian military, a couple of years ago, it was a transgender woman or a transgender man. I don't sort them. So yeah, you're right. The reason of their hate, I mean the West, the reason of their hate, it is, I would not say religious, because it is not a religion. It is a hate of a devil against the glory of the God. You know, it is a fight of a good, a fight of angels, and a fight against evil. This is about it. You know,
Yesterday, I
sorry,
beg your pardon.
Yeah, let me continue. If you look at the Nazi Germany, it was also anti-Christian. For example, Heinrich Himmler, he had a quotation that National Socialism, the ruling party in the Third Reich, is incompatible with the Christianity. hundreds of priests in the Third Reich, either Catholic or Protestant, were moved to concentration camps. So it is the very same. There were lots of recordings when Nazi in 1941 came to Russia, which at that time was called the USSR, and they destroyed the monasteries. They did it deliberately. You know, it is their agenda to destroy Christianity.
Yesterday, I received a telephone call from Professor Rita Abrahamson, who is now a full endowed professor of politics at Oxford University. And she's very liberal. We don't agree on anything at all, but we get on nicely. She's, I think, one of only two liberals that I can think of that I've met in recent years who I'm happy to chat to her, have supper with her. She's very pleasant company. And she said to me that that we Suidlanders, maybe we don't realize the people that follow us on YouTube. She said because she sees us say certain things that have never been said before, never, ever, ever. And then she'll hear them repeated and she'll think, but this guy in the US Senate or in the European Parliament, he's using the same phrase as Simon Roche. So she didn't say this, the next part of what I'm about to say now, but she implied that YouTube completely messes with our algorithms. And if we get 8,000 views of a video, then really it should be 80,000. And if we think that it's this stratum that's watching, well, in fact, it's that stratum, some very, very serious people. And with that in mind, I'm going to say something that I have not seen discussed very much. Kaya Kallas, we're on the same theme as we, yeah, as you've just answered, the same theme. Recently, a few months ago, gave a speech in which she had a board, a cardboard picture, a map of Russia on an easel, like a painter's easel, displayed. On this map was drawn the 5 new countries that they want to make out of Russia. So they want to chop Russia up into 5 parts. And then, of course, they'll sell them off, I suppose, as they sold off the lithium fields and the rare earth fields in Ukraine to BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard prior to Donald Trump mentioning it. He was 2 years later, 2.5 years later, we had already seen the reports on these deals that had been done with the Ukrainian government for BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and to buy up these all of this Ukrainian land. And then when Donald Trump talked about, well, we've got to get something for our 350 billion, then you realize, so that was the deal. The 350 billion was collateralized by the land. Donald Trump wasn't initiating it. He was just announcing something that had occurred, a transaction, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years prior. Now, I'll just continue with another little anecdote and then invite your response. Again, something that nobody is talking about. There are a number of very, let me say, occultic speakers on YouTube who or esoteric, if you like, who deliver sermons every week, and I follow some of them. I've done hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours of research into this, And these guys are saying that this is the year that the buildings of the Third Rome, that's to say Moscow, as you will know, must be brought down. There are some calendar questions, whether you're talking a solar calendar or a lunar calendar, and there are in the Western calendar, in our calendar, there are about 6 lost years that I don't think were lost from your calendar. What do you say to that? What do you say to this thing that troubles me so much? I watch what's happening. I hear these people talking, and I think, dear me, this is really about destroying Russia. It's not really about Ukraine. It's not really about, it's just these people are hell-bent on destroying the Third Rome, and they're doing it with some urgency because as some of these esoteric, maybe you want to call them priests, I don't know, describe in their sermons, this is the year that this must all happen. Please tell us your impressions. Clearly, you're familiar with some of these ideas.
Simon, all you have just shared pretty shows the difference between the Russian approach and the Western approach. For decades, Russia has been offering equal partnership. Russia said that we will give you gas, we will give you oil, we will give you even rare minerals like titan under a very comfortable price. Just respect us as equal partners. Respect the the post-Soviet countries as our zone of interests. Yeah, because Russia does not install its military bases in Canada or Mexico. Russia does not provokes the uprising of Scotland, Catalonian or Irish separatists. Russia just wanted a fair trade and equal partnership. And the West neglected all this offer. Why? I don't know. I think it is like an existential conflict. We have a different way of thinking. As for the maps where the West really wants to dissolute Russia, yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Again, you would find no Russian politicians. Yeah, maybe there are some freaks from Twitter, like just internet trolls, but except internet trolls, no politician, no Russian politician would call for dissolution of the United States, for destroying, for disassembling the United Kingdom of Great Britain into 4 kingdoms and so on. But we see that the West really wants to destroy Russia. Also, we see that it is the very same agenda that was endorsed by Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, by Adolf Hitler, and all the other Western invaders. You know, all of them failed, and so will the current Western invaders. And I think the last take, if the West really wanted to reach peace in Ukraine, it would halt it all the supply, the military supply to the Ukrainian army. And the war would be stopped in an hour. But the West does not. Why? We know that about, I think, 90% of shells, armory, bullets, aid, financial aid for Ukraine is Western rooted. But the West does not stop it. It means that it is not about Ukraine. It is the desire of the West to destroy Russia. But the West will fail as did Adolf Hitler 80 years ago. Yeah, sorry, bro. Unfortunately, my time is running out. We have an hour on air. So, Simon, let's say goodbye.
Yes, it's come to that time. Edvard, thank you very much for your willingness to do this video. It's been delightful to me to speak to a Russian who knows a little bit more of this stuff. I hope to meet you in Russia sometime. I don't know, but I would love to meet you in person. I'm very sorry that I didn't manage to connect with you when I was in Moscow a few months ago. I tried very hard, but I just couldn't do it. Thank you, Edvard, for your time. Thank you for your willingness to speak in English to our audience, to open their eyes and their ears to the truth of what is happening in Russia, Edvard.
Yeah, bye-bye, Simon.
Bye-bye.
Keep fighting.
Will do, I will do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Edvard.